go. But we officially 8 minutes out. So if you're watching this, you can fast forward 8 minutes, and that's when we should be getting the class material. Admit. Spotlight for everybody. It said spotlight for everybody. Yay! That's me. All right, so I need to see where we in here. Met downloads. Maxfield chapter 5. Boom, composite phrases. Yes, taxonomies, indexes. Okay. So that one. Research methods, that's the accelerator one. This one. Ooh, did I not put in the chapter stuff? I need to put those in. I forgot about that part. That's coming in. So let's say, actually, what am I thinking? That's going to be right here in this one. Download. Where's my? Give me down. Yeah. There we go. Boom, boom. And last up. So today we're going to talk about all right. That still have some coffee. That's the downside. Yeah, I won't make it through this class. So do I down it and go get water? Yeah, that's probably what I should do. Otherwise, we'll run halfway through. Be back in a minute. I'll be right back.
Understand this assignment too. Not really. We kind of got like a little group, like us three that are working on it together in the library, and we kind of came up with a little outline, but I'm still kind of really confused about it. So. Yeah. But he said that he's gonna go over it more today because a lot of people are confused. Okay. So hopefully he'll clear all of it up.
Yeah. But
Yeah, yeah, right, me too.
Become so familiar to so many. The burden of the response to the horrible storm many Americans in this region felt helpless and abandoned and left behind by the government. And yet in North Carolina, sound of desperation, the American people answered the call much more so than you federal government, unfortunately.
Admit. All right. So we'll start with some fun stuff. 3 minutes. Okay, so tell me what's going on in the world.
Liam Payne died. You know, One Direction star.
I know the band. How so?
They claim he fell out of a balcony window, like 3-story high hotel window.
That'll do it.
Our hotel, he was on the balcony and he fell. They had a balcony.
No, if he jumped, could have been pushed.
Exact push.
Fell.
He had a lot of drugs and broken stuff in the hotel room.
Oh, even better.
So either it was like a
Could have been a wild party or a real bad fight. Nice.
Stuff that's going on with Diddy right now, they're trying to connect him to Diddy. I've been
I've seen
seeing
that,
a lot
yeah.
of that.
the Diddy stuff. You've been seeing all that?
Yeah. I had forgotten about that. My son, he's constantly bringing me memes and stuff about Diddy. It was what was how many views can Diddy get with Diddy? It was like, oh my God. It's like I guess they did call him, Diddy. But that one was horrible.
Now they're trying to say that Jay-Z also had a bunch of parties and he was even worse than Diddy.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to bring.
It's all of them. It's the entertainment industry.
So Beyonce is this murderer, she's plotted all these murders, and that's the reason why people are scared to get awards and
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's a
That's
conspiracy.
hilarious. It's definitely crazy time. Don't tell you that. I watched some of the stuff. I don't think I watched the news really much at all over the weekend. But I remember hearing one, I think it was last week or the week before, originally went out as another assassination attempt against Donald Trump. And it was out in California. You guys probably heard about that one. It was within a day, the guy gets released though. Okay, what's going on there? Fake press passes, fake license plate, a whole bunch. And he had a shotgun, a pistol, and stuff. It's but he's released. What's going on there? Apparently, he's it sounded like he was one that was on in favor of that party. So it's differential treatment there, or what is that? And it's what? What does that mean? Crazies are out everywhere. Yeah, that's what it is. Oh, that's where it's dangerous.
Him being released, it makes me think that maybe Donald Trump had him hired to pretend he was gonna
Who
shoot
knows?
him to make to
Yeah, well, it's
favor.
yeah, well, it's and who knows? 'Cause it's when you start dealing with that, realize that it's like dealing with someone who's schizophrenic, right? Whenever you start having these stories, because that's sometimes what you're literally dealing with. It's this person with schizophrenia is under this delusion. It's it's just so. The world's a crazy place. I'll be glad whenever next year is over. Then I'll get a good, probably year of kind of normality before it's the next election thing. It's ugh. But let's see, other things going on. There was that. He did. I'd forgotten about all that. That's horrible. Yeah.
Has the hurricane stuff kind of died down?
I
haven't
think
really-
so. I remember hearing about that there were 2 forming out in the ocean, but stuff. I did like the conspiracy theories related to the one that went through North Carolina, though, where this had to be space lasers or something like that. 'Cause I heard a bunch of crazy- yeah, it's you have people who really believe that stuff. Well, they do cloud selling, but it's not that. It's but I tell you, the world's a crazy place.
There's this I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or not, but apparently there's I can't remember where it's at, but they're taking matter and creating, oh gosh, all the names are leaving my brain, but it's pretty much this matter that they're collecting up, and it can destroy our universe.
Ooh, that's probably antimatter. That's
Yeah,
a large.
antimatter,
yeah.
because they're trying to recreate the Big Bang.
Yeah, that's the large
That's
hadron
insane.
collider thing. Yeah, that one's hilarious. Because that one, well, what it is it's one because the amount of energy it takes to create antimatter is so high, we'll never get enough to really do anything with it. The problem is that as soon as it comes in contact with regular matter, it polarizes it, creates pure energy. Right? So if you think about nuclear bomb is just creating an unstable element, turning it back into energy. Antimatter is on the other side of the spectrum. So you get more. And it wouldn't need a lot of power. It's just a lot of energy to create. Oh my goodness, there's so much stuff going on in the world. I always love that. All right, so it is officially 11:02. We're moving into chapter 6 now. Or actually, I should say it's chapter 5. I think I have still something that we need to talk about. I don't remember now that I said that. Chapter 5. Some of the stuff we've talked about already, but I'm just kind of going through it so that way we can knock out the midterm. If you've been on Blackboard, you'll notice that there are probably a couple more quizzes out there, I think. Let me show you that to you guys. It's like I just realized I actually hadn't loaded out the newest PowerPoints and I need to do that. That's going to be here. So I need to load up those two newest ones. And so under quizzes, yeah, we've got quiz 2 and quiz 3. Assignment 2. So we talked about that a few times. I know that the outline there, that was one I had kind of taken from another project I had going for somebody. So feel free to change it as you deem necessary, but those are the kind of generalized areas you want to hit. Let's see, anything else I need to say over there? If you have questions, let me know, but like I said, don't stress out about it. That one is basically a way for me to get your ideas on the paper, because once I have that, I can start playing with that a little bit more and change up the language where it needs to be and align it to processes so you can see how those ideas actually function and work. From there, let's see, anything else we need to wrap up? Crime stuff, this one we need to talk about, and then I'll start showing some other things. Okay, so when we start talking about crime, first we need to talk about what is crime when we're talking about it. What is it we mean when we think crime? What is crime? You're going to define something as a crime. What would you say?
Anything that breaks the law, I guess.
Okay. Yes. What else? You're interested in learning about it. What are the different ways you're going to look at it?
You like how they break the law?
Good. That's what you want to look at. That would be something like a process one things right into prevention. Right? And so some of it, to some degree, is what you want to look at, like always. But realize when we say crime, we're talking largely about this, and what people identify as criminals. It's not always the same thing. It's like that whole political thing. You got the guy with the gun out in California. It's like, pretty sure he'd be in trouble out there being in that kind of an area. Was it criminal or was it not? And did they choose to enforce it? Is it something that's going to count? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's basically what we start getting at. This is anytime we're dealing with this, to some degree, we're dealing with how we count stuff, right? What counts as what, and then what classification systems we have in place. When we start dealing with crime, this is the one where when you look at it at its most base, you have to realize that no one really knows anything about what's going on, right? Ooh, I had another bit of one that popped into my head. That was my last class, my policing class. I had a student that reminded me that UCR neighbors, they had to revise their numbers in the last week for the last year. The reason why I caught attention is because it was a political thing. One side was using the number projections as their benefit, and turned out that number was higher, so there was more crime. And so now it looks bad instead of looking good. And so that's why I caught people's attention. But what it is, anytime that we're dealing with this number right here, people have an idea for what it is in reality. What is it really? Who knows? There are different ways that we capture this information, and they give us a general idea for what this thing is, but none of them actually capture it. None of them do. The big ones in this chapter that it will talk about, you have your UCR and NIBRs on your official side. Capital S is a lowercase. I can sound it. Uniform Crime Report and the National Incident-Based Reporting System, right? And so that's going to be on the official side. So if you're looking for official counts of crime, it's here. Official. So if we want to know what the crime rate in California for the specific crime rate is, or specific crime is, we can calculate that right here. Is that though, in fact, the actual real number of crimes that took place of that type in that state? No. Why is that? Why do you guys say no so quickly?
Is the unreported crimes.
Yeah, reported, and I'm assuming ones that like kind of are slipped under the rug and whatnot.
That's an interesting one. Trying to remember. I think that was policing. That's what they call it. Where crimes are unfound. Right. Basically, what that is they either reclassified it as a lower crime for that case, or discretion, no crime at all. Ooh, that kind of a thing. Right. And so since it's reported, that decreases that number. So in reality, that number is probably going to be higher, right? We also know that the police will do this to some degree, depending on politics and pressures, right? That decreases it. Ooh. As we're dealing with, well, catch up real quick. Okay, so we're dealing with crimes, measuring crimes, UCR, NIBRs. Remember those? Okay. So official numbers. Right now, we're identifying errors. Right. So if we're dealing with the official side of things, we know it's only dealing with the reported. There's this whole classification here that's going to be much, much larger. Right. We have unfinding of things. Right. We had one too many human traffickers in this area. Let's not classify that. No, I'm just kidding. It'd be something like one too many arrests or something like that. One too many whatever. Right. Well, this is starting to look bad. Let's reclassify that as a different type of crime. That crime type over here is real similar. It's got a much lower number. It'll kind of make it look a little bit more balanced if you do that, right? And so you hide it, right? That can go this way. Ooh, I always say this when we're talking about gang stuff. How big of a gang problem do we have in town? Gang problem. Now I'm starting to worry, guys. We have gangsters. Okay. Maybe. Depends on which group of delinquents we're talking about. Hoodlums over there. They act like a gang. That was me. Yeah. Go to any department that has a gang unit. How big is their gang problem? Huge, right? Is that because there's a real gang problem, or is it because of the fact they need to justify that they have a gang problem? So this can go the other direction too. You can have things that are classified as a bigger problem than what they are, because there needs to be that justification. So it can go either way, right? So if you're going to play with those numbers, realize that you can unfind stuff and you can also, we'll say, find things, reclassify it a little bit different, right? Ooh. Since we're dealing with lies, because that's kind of what you're doing here. You're lying, right? Unreporting stuff, to some degree, you look at that as, I don't know if I'd say that's a lie, but that's where the numbers lie, right? Because that's the report number, that's a real number. That's not the real number. What we're doing with that one, we're about this one right here. false reports. Ooh. People do that. People do that quite a bit, actually, right? They'd be like, ooh, and but you can kind of a neutral ground. Um, mm, 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 complaints, right? Noise complaints. Is that really a false report, or is it really annoying, right? And how many times does it take before it's an annoyance that they do something about, or how many times is it just that asshole neighbor who really wants the police to come and bother me, right? That kind of thing. This could be either one of those things. I could be the jerk here who's playing my music real loud, justifying it and low level, or maybe the person just doesn't like it, and that's for all crimes, most part, right? How many people get framed for murder? It's not zero, right? So when we see this number, we know it's going to be on the low side of things, right? We're dealing with crime on a line. We've got a number over here. That's this one, right? These give you some idea for where that lower threshold is. Some, right? But then we've got this one that applies here. This one's technically a different data set. This one's going to apply here. Those are both positive, so that means that lower threshold might actually be this way, right? So that number could actually be lower, depending on how big of a problem that is, because we don't know. Most of those errors go this way, though, right? Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, you have things, other ways to get the same kind of information, right? So there's a few different systems that we use, but usually they're based off of things that are basically surveys. So we do is we go and we ask people, right? This is where you get the NCVS. That's the big one, National Crime Victimization Survey, right? And so there's a third one you can do that's we'll get to in a second. But this one's probably the most consequential. It's what it does, right? At its most simple, what it does is it provides you this right here. I'm going to ask people if they were victims of crime, right? I'm going to give them a whole bunch of different crimes that they could identify. I'm going to ask them if they reported it or not. As I start doing that, I start the line somewhere over in this territory, right? As you're dealing with that, what are the errors that people could have with that? Okay, so we're dealing with unreported stuff. We know that there's not going to be any official stuff to really measure against, see if there's consistency there. But you can think about it. Okay, so if I'm asking someone about questions about their own victimization, what are things that might drive that number higher or lower? Because we see errors, they tend to do that, right? If we have an error here, it's not going to have no effect. It's going to do something. So start thinking about it. Okay. So if I'm asking you questions, what was the reason it wasn't reported in the first place? What's the reason why most people don't report crimes? No, it's Greek in here, right? Joe, Peter. I'm hungry. It's getting close to lunchtime. I'm thinking about euros now. It's a pain in the ass. Yeah, it's a pain, right? Going through this process is difficult. It's time consuming at minimum. This is if you're dealing with something that's relatively normal, right? Your bike got stolen. Do you file a police report? This is really worth it. Okay. Now think about the nature of some of those criminal actions that can happen to others, right? You're going to expect me to do what and the what now? I have to go where and have what performed? There are a lot of reasons why people are not looking for it. But some of those same reasons still apply here. Oh, yeah. Right? For example, might there be reasons people are hesitant to even acknowledge criminal victimization here? Yes. So you might still have this one here. So that number might still be biased in this way. So you might still have people who don't report, right? Then you'll have people who don't understand the question. That's common. Every question you ever have, there'll be someone who doesn't understand it. Better you are writing questions, the easier it is, but it's always going to be a problem. Historically, this one, there's going to be your sex-based crimes are the most common that people don't realize what's being included there, like your criminal victimization in those areas. As they give you the list of options where you could have been victimized there, is that something where someone's going to recognize that that was an actual incident that was criminal? Well, if you don't identify the situation well enough for them, they might not realize that what happened fits parameters of that definition. Okay. So that's another reason why that number might be higher. Right? Then you have some of the things on the other end of the spectrum. I think last time I mentioned, was it temporal lensing, something of that nature. They'll talk about it in one of these chapters, just probably termed up for getting related to it. But I ask you, because usually there's going to be time bound, it's going to be something like, most often it's about 6 months. Are you going to remember just within 6 months? Probably not, because something serious, it might have more of an effect. So that's another one that could, well, what that would do is that would actually say that your number is going to be on this side, right? You can have some on this side, you can have some on this side, so it's going to be all around there. If I were talking to you about, here's the other one. Self-reports, right? Instead of asking what happened to you, what have you done? Right? Those are where you typically get a lot of your drug, substance use, that kind of stuff. The what is it? Dawn Drug Abusers Warning Network, SAMHSA, the substance abuse, medical. I can't remember that one. No questions about this. Tell me about your behavior, whether it's personal drug use, your personal criminal activities, that kind of thing. You start dealing with that. Okay. That's a different number. You might start getting closer to this one, right? Also realize that whenever you're dealing with that, you have things like esteem. Am I going to say, I did more drugs than what I did? Or I did something more serious than because it gets me clout, whatever. Right, so that's going to be in there too, biasing those numbers a different direction. All of those issues are true simultaneously all at once. Because anytime you're dealing with large numbers, that's what happens. All those individual exceptions come in there. It's just are there significant numbers enough to cause you to be able to see the patterns that exist. What this is, at best, that right there, some type of bookend to truth. Somewhere between those two numbers that are given, the real actual number may lie. It may be, it probably is somewhere between these numbers. Problem is that what you'll see is most research sticks with one of those, right? Because there's too much stuff to handle, right? And so you'll have arguments that are based off of this, or off of this, or off of this, without accounting for the other side of the argument. How big of a problem is our sex crimes in this country, right? How many people are victimized by this? You look at this number, it's like 1 in, was it 10,000, I think? If you take the number of those that are reported and you take that and expand out across someone's lifetime, it was something like that. Maybe it's 1 in 1,000. 1 in 1,000 seems like too many. 1 in 10,000 seems like too many. You look at this thing right here, though. What is it? quarter, 1 in 5. It's 1 in 5 if you're male. Yeah. Like, oh my goodness. So it's somewhere between 1 out of 4 people to 1 out of 10,000 or whatever, right? If you pick one side of that data set to run with exclusively, you get a much different picture. What is going on in reality? Somewhere between those two pictures, it's not on either side. That's funny right there. Love the methods. Okay. Now I have an idea for how this stuff works and how it should be used, how you should view it to some degree. Let's see what the book says. All right. Measure is important for criminal justice research stuff. Yes. Okay. Researchers must decide on offenses, unit of analysis, and purposes. Those are the big ones, right? So offenses, where that one will come up. What types of crimes are we dealing with? We're dealing with sex-based crimes. If we are, how far do we do include that? I'm sure we're going to be going with like rape, molesting. How far down does it go? Right? How many different offenses? How many of those can you get data on? What's being tracked where and when? Right? As you start to identify that, that's for you yourself. Is that going to be the same thing that someone else does in a different area at a different time? Not necessarily. If I said violent crime versus crime against persons, is there a difference there? Yes. The difference there ultimately, though, will be determined by the methodology section, whatever paper you're reading, right? What I'm getting at is the difference between crime against persons versus violent crime. Not all crime against persons is violent in nature. Most of it is, though, right? Do you want to draw a distinction between assault and battery? Right? That's when you can draw. Is it something that you're saying that it has to do with threat or the actual violence? You know, actual violence, there's some wiggle room there. Different ways you can measure it that provide different pictures. And so as you're looking at that, it's just more to the story. Let's see here. Unit of analysis. So when we start talking unit of analysis, realize that anytime you're dealing with this, you see our, we'll start here. Your unit of analysis is a bit different because of the methods that they use to basically get you there. Right? So the UCR and NIBRS, what these do is these are police departments that want to, because it's an at-will thing. It's not one that they choose. Well, it's not one that they are forced to. It's one they choose to submit data for. That's why that political thing where the numbers were slow to roll in, it looked one way and then it changed because more information came in. What this does, this are two different things. This one, very much just summary measure. This will give you counts for how many different crimes of what types took place where. Right? This one will tell you about the actual incidences. Incidents. What I mean by that is it will say, for each criminal action, it is only classified as one type of incident. Okay. Robbery that's led into a forcible kidnapping, hostage, and I got tired of that person, so I shot them before I fled. They caught me, but that person's dead now. Murder. That's NIBRS. It'll capture a number of those other crimes. Not all of them necessarily, depending on how many there are, but it'll capture quite a few. It'll also capture details about the offender, the victim, all that stuff. much higher level of detail. It would give you some estimates for how much more detail it has. It's something like 10,000 more cells. Like that's kind of the scale it increases it by. So pretty big. This versus this. Also realize that you can look at different levels. Since this one individual, right? This is going to have more data about those incidences. I can start looking at that data about those individual differences. This one, largely aerial, by location, area, right? What that means, you're looking at your counties, that kind of stuff. However, it's aggregated, however they report it. We haven't quite talked about sampling yet. Talk about sampling here in a little bit. That's you start getting into things like the NCBS. You start dealing with stuff that's a little bit different, right? Because that could be numbers that are based off of survey procedures, right? But that one, what they do is they base it off of households, right? Now you're not talking individual incidences. You're not talking individual people that are involved with these instances. Now you're back to aggregating it again. Up by area. Right. Your unit here. Households. That's a group, right? And so that's something different. And so if you're going to use multiple data sources, you can use these things together. You have to make sure that your units, your levels all match. That kind of your not units, your unit analysis, that kind of thing. But you're in the same kind of a level. You can aggregate upward but not down. So that's why we have that conversation. So as you're watching these different data sets, you have to be familiar with what exactly that you're dealing with. Okay. Here what it says. What about units of analysis? Crime involves 4 elements that are often easier to recognize abstractly than are to measure. Offender, victim, offense, and incident. Yeah. No, the purpose of these things dictate its form, right? The NCBS is created to poll people across the nation about their victimization experiences. The data gets for that. You can use it for other purposes, but that's what it's for. Just like these are monitoring systems. This is to monitor how much crime is in the country. You see our neighbors. We can take that data, attach it to other data that we have, and analyze it. That's what it does. Oversight, accountability, all those types of things. A few different areas that you can apply this stuff into, but yeah, it's all about that. Yeah. Monitoring, accountability, research. Here's where we're talking about crimes known to the police and the uniform crime report. So it breaks down the 2 different types of offenses, part 1 and part 2, right? And so the tracking scheme that the UCR has for those different types is different. Some of those it will track just that it's reported. Some of those it's only whenever their arrests are made. And so as you're tracking that, those numbers look different. If you're tracking it with the arrests and charges, that number is going to be much, much lower than just incidences. And so you have to be aware of that. So that way, whenever you look, especially if you're making comparisons, that you're talking about the same type of thing. Okay. Yeah, problems. Quality of data, data processing, political problems, hierarchy rule with the UCR. So there are however many thousands of police departments across the country, however many people that they have involved in inputting their data. And are all of them going to do it the same with the same accuracy? Nope. So a lot of that between them all. And that covers that. UCR measurement criteria. Not exhaustive nor exclusive. So there are problems with it. Those are weaknesses. NIBRS is better because you can start to address it to some degree, but realize it's also much more involved. All right. So from here, it goes to NIBRS. These numbers are old. I'm trying to see if I had. Nope. It just gives you guidelines for gathering information, much broader array of offenses. So 8 offenses for UCR versus 46, that kind of thing. So it starts getting an idea for how much more complex, how much more data is being drawn into this. It's considerably more in terms of efforts. I thought I had some numbers in terms of how many agencies were sending for NIBRS versus UCR. That will probably be in your book. Realize those numbers are a couple of years old. And so we've had more move over to NIBRS in the meantime. That's going to be where things go moving forward. Let's see. Next up moves into victimization surveys. So starts by talking about the big one, the NCVS, right? Primary purpose, that unreported crime thing. And so you can see the divergences there. You can see those purposes. When you look at those numbers, you can see that to some degree. From there, it identifies some of its issues. People don't remember things. Here you go. They call it telescoping. All right. And then also, there's the crimes underestimated relationships again, right? If you're asking questions about households and you're dealing with this, you may not get clear answers if you're dealing with households asking about domestic violence kind of thing. And so that's just by its nature of what those topics are. People are going to dial back. Run down the hall here in a second. NCVS redesign. So here's where they talk about the redesign in 93, right? Added questions and cues to help people recall and distinguish minor incidences. More direct questions on sex crimes because people's willingness to discuss it had increased. And so basically what happens is people are more willing to talk about it, get more data, you can actually start seeing the thing better for what it is. Gradual increase in telephones. Yeah, it's just talking about technological changes at that point in time. Here's the problem though. Anytime you make changes, that change took place here. Now, I can't compare this sweater or this sweater because I'm not measuring the same thing anymore, right? That's why I think I mentioned in here last class. UCR, if you look it up, it will have 2 measures, one for rate, one for legacy rate. The legacy rate is the old one. So that way you can still look back before to see how much that's changed in the time since. Let's see, community victimization surveys. Here's where it's going to talk a little bit about that. Joint efforts. Comparing victimization and police. They take fundamentally different approaches. Yes, we've already talked about that. The supplemental homicide report, that's another one that's out there. It's going to be over in this territory. You'll find it in the same place. Homicide report. And so that gives you some more information on homicides. Okay. See this one, NIBRS. Examined for specific geographic areas at the local level. Good. So offenders, surveys of offenders. Why would you need it? Here mentions delinquency, so your low-level stuff, victimless crimes, that kind of thing, drug use, all of those good types of crimes. National Survey on Drug Use and Health, right? That's what it is. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services. That's the one sponsored by SAMHSA. So these are the big ones right here. National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Monitoring the Future, that's the one for juveniles. It actually ranges to young adults too, college age. Those in college and those not. So that's anytime you hear someone who's talking about changes in projections, like in juvenile drug use trends, that's going to be between this one, or drug use trends in general is usually this one, right? If you remember, you probably wouldn't remember. It's like 10 years ago for you all. Probably about 10 years ago, a decade ago, there was a big thing about Ritalin and those types of drugs finding their way into the college scene because people wouldn't be able to stay up late and study the night before an exam because they spent the rest of the time partying, kind of thing. Ooh, not good for your grades. Even taking the Ritalin doesn't help, was, what was found. But this is where they first started to identify that trend. First started to identify it in high schoolers. And then just looking in college and, oh, look, it's even more over there. Yeah. Okay. Validity and reliability of self-report measures, always issues with that. Remember, basically, when you start dealing with validity and reliability, think about it as sort of like the differences between qualitative and quantitative research. Start dealing with numbers, your reliability increases, your validity can decrease though, because you get away from the thing itself to some degree. And so anytime you're doing surveys, they're strong in one, weak in the other. Drug surveillance system. So the DRESD drug abuse monitoring system, drug abuse warning network. So it's got a couple of those it mentions that in there. So if you want to find out those types of things, realize that those identify two different processes there too, right? Because if we're going to ask someone about their own stuff, who all can we ask? Right? We can ask those that do the drugs, right? If you're dealing with drugs, let's say we're dealing with drugs. You can ask those who do the drugs. You can ask those who sell the drugs. Those probably the same people sometimes, right? Where else do we look at police officers, their official numbers, that kind of thing. Anywhere else we could go and ask? Oh, I got one for you. I was looking at we'll say it's heroin. Trying to figure out issues with heroin. Problem is people die. Where should I look to find out information on that?
More.
Yeah, you can start finding places like that. Yeah, you start dealing with hospitals and other places like that, death reports, all that kind of stuff. So like, depending on what you want to look at, it's like those hospitals themselves might be the source of the data that you're getting, not the individual, right? That's which one was it? Yeah, that's Dawn. Samples of hospitals and medical examiners nationwide kind of thing, right? You get a different picture there. That'd be like you're led to and opioids. It's like, okay, we've got the list of those who died. Now you can start looking at who didn't, right? Where all the places that Narcan's been deployed. Well, hospitals, they'll have one place you can look, right? And so you just kind of balloon out from there, kind of what the topic is. Where are the places that you'd look to find data, right? Could be hospitals. Could be any number of places. Here they have a couple other places that measure crime. Global Terrorism Database. Observing crime. Each specific research. Yeah. Each measure of crime has strengths and weaknesses, and all of them are selective. Realize though that whenever you start digging into this, if crime stuff what you like, the classifications, the typologies that you use, there's considerable wiggle room there. So it's like you can find, if I want to deal with crimes against persons, I could use the UCR's list as a classification. I could go and I could tie into the literature and say, I'm going to deal specifically violent crime. I'm going to go with maybe something that's already been built in the literature, or maybe it's something different, right? And then you find out a reason that you want to make it distinguish if you really wanted to do something like that. Crimes not least, dark figure of crime, surveillance system. That's all pretty straightforward. Cool. All right. This was from chapter 5. It talked about composite measures, typologies, indexes, that kind of a thing. So realize anytime you're dealing with that, typologies, indexes, you're dealing with different ways of classifying things. Typology is pretty straightforward. You just create different categories, types for them. Indexes get to be a little bit more difficult because basically we start dealing with there is, what kinds of things you try and distinguish it and how, right? So here they talk about disorder. And so they break it out across physical and social, okay? I'm looking at physical, I'm gonna be looking at things like, what's this place look like? If I look at this place, does it look like, abandoned buildings, litter, graffiti, junk and vacant lots, parking, yards that are parking lots, bars in windows, that kind of thing. That's gonna be on the physical side. Social side, how many people are standing out in the street, doing drugs, selling them, they're drinking right there in the front yard, who's doing what kind of a thing, right? That interaction. When a car approaches, as those people are in the middle of the road, do they move out of the way or do they make the car go around? Right? That kind of a thing. Depending on what you're looking at, it's like those are ways you can make distinctions. Your index is created by averaging scores for each measure. That's one way you can do it. There's actually a bunch of different ways to do it. Composite one, I mentioned a couple up before, is where you just add them together. It's an additive scale. You can average them. There's all kinds of things you do. You can weight them. So that way you can determine how they relate to whatever it is that you're actually, whatever it is you want to do. You can weight them. So they have different weights depending on how their impact is. A whole bunch of things you can do with them, right? And so we'll look through the PowerPoint for this other one real quick. Or is that one? 6 right here. All right, so we've already talked about the UCR and NIBRS and then CVS. See if there's anything else in here. Here's where it talks about its nature of its relationship. So crime can be an independent variable, a dependent variable. It all depends on what it is you want to look at. How do you want to structure this? What theory or what idea, what question you want to key into, right? Offenses, unit of analysis, and purpose. We've talked about those. Main thing is make sure you're consistent across both. You can move upward, you can aggregate, but not go the other direction. Talk about crimes known to police. UCR, yeah. So here, type 2. Less serious measures, they don't track those the same way they track the type 1. Talked about those problems already. Aggregate individual both necessary. Okay, that's actually a pretty good question. Why would we have both aggregate and individual levels? Do we need to track both of those things? I've already mentioned this, like most research, when you look at it, usually they pick a data source, maybe a couple, and start combining those together and start analyzing it. But we're dealing with levels here. Why would you want both individual and aggregate levels?
Just to get a more accurate.
You increase accuracy, right? But remember, this isn't your C. That old picture of the painting, got the apple in the face. Remember, we're never looking at something specifically. We're looking at the distance between the 2 points, right? As we're looking at, take your individual measures for crime, right? We're trying to identify, okay, this is this whole group of people. This is what, the average sum total is. You do sigma signs very well. All right, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out what the difference between this one person is and that average. And I'm going to figure out all that. So I'm finding out what the difference between this person is and the whole group, right? You do the same thing at a different level. When we start going across levels, the lower down you get, basically what you add in is variations. I can start accounting for more of those differences across levels. As you get into, you actually get into, let's start getting into multi-level. So it's not just like we're looking at how this thing functions at the county level. It's not just that. It's like, okay, we have this problem here in the state. Here's how it works within each county. Here's the relationship between maybe the lower levels there. And I can actually see, does this one have an effect at the next level or not? And what things actually have an effect with each level? and start to see how they actually work. Main things about that variation, the lower level you are, the closer to people, the closer you are to more choices, more opportunities. That thing, that's what you're picking up. Trying to figure out what makes things different. And so there you go. Here's where it talks about some homicide reports. Talk about that. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about now. They're trying to move to NIBRS. More and more agencies are moving that way. But again, realize the extra. Yeah, why would you want to report the UCR or not? Yeah. We're dealing with the difference between UCR and NIBRS. There's a lot more effort involved in NIBRS. A lot more data you can do a lot more with, right? You're no longer dealing with just one type of crime, for instance. You can capture more. You still might not capture all of it. You can start to get this type of information. But also think about how much attention, how much energy, how many efforts are involved to make sure that information that you get from the ground makes it to those federal agencies and then back out where it's useful. Like that's a lot of effort. Let's see, quality control. Some states require certification, measurement quality. Not exhaustive, but they are exclusive now. Talked about that already. Measure crime victimization surveys. Yeah. Realize that what you're dealing with there is, like I said, bookends the truth. It's not going to be on either one side of those things, but between the two. You're dealing with the victimization side of the official counts. Like at best, what you have are some ways to kind of bound whatever issue you're actually measuring, whatever crime type. But then realize as we went through it, there are reasons why those numbers on either side can be both higher and lower. So it's the best we have. It's one of the reasons why our field's referred to as one of proxy measures and things of that nature, because most of our measures, one, we've got to figure out what it is exactly that's keying into, but two, we're having to go through it tangentially and basically double check everything.
James?
Yes.
Say something a second.
Yeah.
So you know, the NIBRS and the UCR debacle began a long time ago, toward the beginning of, my career in law enforcement. And I can tell you that the reason why they're pushing agencies to get onto NIBRS is because in UCR, there's so many different codes that are inadequate, like simple assault versus aggravated. I mean, there was no distinction between them in the early versions of UCR. So
If you can't make those distinctions, how are you going to pull out anything of substance there? That's the big thing. You can't make the connections. It's not. Uh-oh, I think we're out of time. So I covered that. I think we're about through this chapter. Yeah, hold on. Telephone. Yeah, we talked about that. Talk about those. Yeah, I think we got through it all, guys. All right, so we'll pick up Wednesday.
Question about the assignment.
Yeah. Go ahead. Let's see where.
Yes, I was looking at the sex offenders in relation to like the different counties, and I looked on the registry, but I couldn't find a way to like group them by like county. Like it just gives like their mailing addresses and everything, but there isn't a way to like find them by county to like get the data with that. You know how to do that?
You'll have to take an extra step to look up if there's an address there, like a city. Look that up to see what county it places it in. That kind of a thing. That's one of those extra steps there. But if you can't do it, don't worry about that. Because what we'll do is whenever you submit that, I'll look at it and we'll take that step to make it to where it's something that can be kind of automated. Cool. I guess that's cool. Cool. All right. Well, with that, I will catch you all next class. Have a great day.